What if the strongest man who ever lived was cursed by a goddess before he even drew his first breath? This is Heracles, half mortal, half god, born with strength no man or beast could match. All he ever wanted was to live a good life and be remembered with honor. But fate had other plans for him. His father was Zeus, king of all the gods, who had fallen for a mortal woman named Alcmene. Their union gave the world Heracles, but it also gave the queen of the gods a reason to hate him. That reason was Hera, Zeus's wife and queen of Olympus. Every time her husband strayed, she despised the children born from it, and none more than Heracles, whose very existence she saw as a humiliation she could never forgive. While Heracles was still an infant, asleep in his crib, Hera sent 2 venomous serpents to kill him. But baby Heracles woke, grabbed a snake in each tiny fist, and strangled them both, the first sign that this child was no ordinary mortal. Heracles grew into the greatest hero Thebes had ever seen, famous for his impossible strength. In time, he married Megara, a gentle Theban princess, and together they built a life filled with children and quiet happiness. But Hera had never stopped watching and never stopped hating him. Seeing Heracles finally happy only deepened her fury, and she decided it was time to strike at the one thing that could truly destroy him: his own mind. Hera cursed him with a violent, blinding madness. In that terrible fog, Heracles could no longer tell friend from monster, and in a horror he would never forgive himself for, he struck down his own beloved children with his own hands. His own hands. When the madness finally lifted, Heracles woke to find what he had done, and the horror of it broke something inside him. There was no strength in the world that could undo this, and no punishment, he felt, would ever be enough. Desperate for a way to atone, Heracles traveled to the Oracle of Delphi, the sacred voice believed to speak the will of the gods. He begged for a path back to redemption, any path at all, no matter how hard. The oracle's answer was severe. Heracles must serve his cousin, King Eurystheus, for 12 years, completing whatever labors the king demanded. Only then could his guilt be washed clean. So the strongest man alive became a servant, all in the name of redemption. That king was Eurystheus, a small, cowardly man who had always envied Heracles' power. Secretly guided by Hera herself, he set out to design tasks so brutal, so impossible, that surely even a demigod would fail and die trying. Heracles did not face this trial entirely alone. His loyal young nephew, Iolaus, who admired him deeply, chose to stand by his side through the years ahead, driving his chariot, tending his wounds, and never once abandoning him. The first task was simple to state, but nearly impossible to do. Kill the Nemean lion, a beast whose golden hide no blade, arrow, or spear could pierce. Heracles cornered it in its own cave, and finding no weapon would work, strangled it bare-handed. He skinned the lion using its own claws, the only thing sharp enough to cut its impenetrable hide, and wore the pelt ever after as armor and trophy. It was this very cloak that would become his legendary symbol. The second labor sent him after the Lernaean Hydra, a monstrous serpent whose many heads grew back double whenever one was cut off. Every strike Heracles landed seemed to make the beast stronger instead of weaker. Realizing brute force alone would never win this fight, Heracles called on Iolaus for help. As Heracles severed each head, Iolaus quickly seared the wound shut with fire, stopping new heads from growing back at all. When Heracles brought back proof of his victory, Eurystheus was furious that he had received help and declared the labor invalid. Because of this, the king simply added more tasks to the list, determined to make Heracles suffer even longer. Next came the Ceryneian hind, a golden antlered deer sacred to the goddess Artemis, so swift that no hunter had ever caught it. Heracles chased the creature relentlessly for an entire year across mountains and rivers before finally catching it unharmed. The fourth labor demanded he capture the Erymanthian boar, a monstrous creature terrorizing the countryside, and bring it back alive. Heracles drove it into deep snow to exhaust it, then hauled it to Mycenae, where Eurystheus was so terrified he hid inside a large storage jar. The fifth task tested his wits rather than his muscle. Clean the Augean stables, home to thousands of cattle, in a single day. Instead of shoveling filth by hand, Heracles cleverly diverted 2 entire rivers to wash through the stables in one great flood. For the sixth labor, Heracles had to drive off the Stymphalian birds, vicious flocks with sharp bronze beaks and metal feathers they could hurl like arrows. With a bronze rattle gifted by the goddess Athena, he startled the birds into flight and struck them down as they scattered. Next, he was sent to capture the Cretan bull, a rampaging beast that had been terrorizing an entire island. Heracles wrestled it into submission and carried it all the way back to Mycenae on his own shoulders. The eighth labor was darker still. Tame the mares of Diomedes, monstrous horses that had been fed human flesh by their cruel king. Heracles overpowered the tyrant and, in poetic justice, fed him to his own savage animals, finally calming them. For the ninth task, Heracles sailed to the land of the Amazons to retrieve the war belt of their queen, Hippolyta. She was ready to gift it to him peacefully, but Hera, always scheming, disguised herself and spread lies that sparked a battle, one that tragically cost Hippolyta her life. The 10th labor took him to the very edge of the known world to steal the cattle of Geryon, a terrifying giant with 3 fused bodies. Heracles defeated him in single combat and drove the entire herd back across the length of Greece. For the 11th task, Heracles had to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by a fearsome dragon and hidden at the edge of the world. Knowing he could not pick them himself, he found the Titan Atlas, who held up the sky and struck a clever bargain. Heracles briefly took the sky's crushing weight onto his own shoulders, while Atlas fetched the apples for him. When Atlas returned and hesitated to take the burden back, Heracles cleverly tricked him into swapping places again, then simply walked away with the golden apples in hand. One labor remained, and it was the cruelest of all. Descend into the underworld itself and capture Cerberus, the 3-headed hound that guarded the gates of the dead. No living man had ever asked such a thing of Hades before. Heracles asked Hades, Lord of the Dead, for permission to take the beast, promising he would use no weapons at all. Hades agreed, but only on one condition. Heracles had to subdue Cerberus with his bare hands alone. With nothing but his lion pelt for armor and his raw strength, Heracles wrestled the monstrous 3-headed hound into submission, its jaws snapping inches from his face. It was, without question, the hardest fight of his entire life. Dragging the beast up into the sunlight, Heracles presented Cerberus to a horrified Eurystheus, who screamed and begged him to take the monster back at once. Heracles obliged, returning Cerberus safely to the gates of the dead. And with that, his 12 years of penance were finally, truly complete. After 12 grueling years, Heracles was finally released from his servitude. What began as punishment for an unbearable tragedy had transformed him into the most celebrated hero in all of Greece. Word of his 12 impossible feats spread across every kingdom, and Heracles went on to join still more adventures, fighting alongside other legendary heroes. But even the strongest man alive still longed for something simpler, a peaceful home and a family again. In time, Heracles met and married Deianira, a kind and gentle woman who offered him the quiet life he had been searching for ever since the tragedy that started it all. One day, while traveling, the couple needed to cross a swollen river. They enlisted the help of Nessus, a centaur who worked as a ferryman, carrying travelers across on his back. But halfway across, Nessus tried to abduct Deianira and flee with her. Furious, Heracles fired a single arrow from the far bank, striking the centaur down before he could escape. As Nessus lay dying, he whispered a final, deceitful lie to Deianira, telling her that his blood, if kept, could be used as a magic charm to keep Heracles' love forever faithful. Not knowing it was poisoned by the very arrow that killed him, she secretly kept a vial of it. Years later, Deianira began to fear she was losing Heracles' affection to another woman. Remembering the centaur's promise, she soaked one of Heracles' robes in the poisoned blood, believing it would restore his love, never suspecting it was actually a slow, agonizing death sentence. The moment Heracles put on the robe, the poison began to burn through his skin like fire. He tried desperately to tear it off, but it had already fused to his body, and every movement only tore his flesh further. Heracles, who had survived a lion with impenetrable skin, a hydra that could not die, and the guardian hound of the dead itself, finally understood that this wound would be the one thing he could never overcome. Rather than let the poison slowly consume him, Heracles chose to end his suffering on his own terms. He asked his companions to build him a great funeral pyre atop a mountain and climbed onto it himself. Flames took his mortal form. As the fire consumed him, Zeus looked down from Olympus and could not let his extraordinary son simply vanish from the world. He reached down and burned away only the mortal part of Heracles, letting the divine half of him rise into the heavens. Even Hera, who had hated and hunted Heracles from the moment he was born, was finally moved by everything he had endured. The madness she cursed him with, the 12 impossible labors, and the courage he showed till his very last breath. At last, she let go of her anger and welcomed him among the gods. Heracles took his place among the gods on Mount Olympus, forever remembered not just for his impossible strength, but for what that strength meant. That even after the worst tragedy, redemption could still be earned through perseverance, no matter how many trials it took. And so the story of Heracles endures to this day, a hero who fell as low as any man could fall, yet rose through 12 impossible trials to become a legend for all time.